I know that you've told me before that your version of Snow White is different, and it's more of a 2022 version of Snow White. What did you mean by that?
I mean, the original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her.
Yeah.
Weird.
Jennifer Lawrence didn't just throw shade. She walked into a press event, lobbed a truth grenade, and left the entire Disney PR team scrambling to rewrite their talking points. It was the kind of moment that felt casual on the surface, but within seconds became the kind of viral juggernaut that explodes across social media with a vengeance.
Have you ever considered that your fairy tales have actually stood the test of time because they are always relevant, because that is what a fairy tale is, because they have timeless, universal values and lessons that any person, regardless of their age, regardless of their generation, could connect to. That is why they are so important. That is why they have been around for hundreds of years. You didn't start these fairy tales. Grimm's fairy tales, that's where they came from. People love these for a reason, because of the values.
The Oscar-winning actress leaned into the mic, flashed that signature smirk, and said, "Honestly, I miss the magic. Where did it go?" And somewhere, in a boardroom not far from Burbank, the mood reportedly turned to pure panic. Because what started as a soft nostalgia question ended up pulling the plug on the entire live-action fantasy machine, and nobody saw it coming. Now, to be clear, Jennifer didn't name names. She didn't need to. The room got quiet, the internet got loud, and Disney allegedly went into full lockdown. The timing was brutal. The Snow White remake had already been limping through controversy after controversy, with Rachel Zegler's every quote being scrutinized like it was a Senate hearing. And then here comes Jennifer.
Because this is a movie that was made in 1937 and is being remade in 2024, and you sit here moaning about the differences between those two movies like 1937 were the glory days.
Cool, composed, and deeply unimpressed. She didn't need to scream. One simple line about missing the magic was enough to cut deeper than 1,000 angry YouTube videos. Sources say Jennifer had been holding her tongue for months, watching, waiting, probably sipping tea while her childhood favorites were slowly turned into glossy, overproduced TED Talks with tiaras. But Snow White? That was the last straw. "When I was little, I wanted to be swept off my feet," she reportedly added. Now it feels like the princesses are trying to give TED Talks. And just like that, she didn't just comment on a movie, she dissected an entire corporate mindset in one sentence. You could hear the internet crackling. It wasn't just what she said, it was how she said it. Relaxed, smiling, a little cheeky, but with a tone that made it clear she meant every word. It was honesty wrapped in charm, and fans couldn't get enough. Memes, montage videos, tweets with millions of views.
Original description of Snow White's skin in the book is as white as snow.
Yeah.
Lips as red as blood, hair as black as ebony. Couldn't be clearer.
They missed the mark there. They should have casted me.
People were calling her the voice of a generation, the last defender of fairy tale magic. Some even said she'd captured everything they've been feeling about Disney's live-action era in one quote. One post summed it up perfectly. Jennifer Lawrence just did more damage to Disney's strategy than the last 5 box office flops combined. Inside the studio, not so cheerful. One insider described the vibe as full system scramble. There were allegedly internal emails flying, trying to contain the fire before it spread. Spoiler alert, too late. A company-wide memo was reportedly sent out reminding talent to celebrate the evolution of storytelling, because of course it was. When you're losing control of the narrative, just slap a shiny buzzword on it and hope for the best. But the truth was out. Jennifer Lawrence, an actress with nothing to gain from throwing a punch, just threw the most elegant uppercut the Disney remake machine has ever seen. And while some tried to write it off as an off-the-cuff remark, fans knew better. This wasn't a fluke. This was a mic drop.
Because they replaced the dwarves with CGI abominations. They are pretending like Rachel Zegler is the first of them all when she looks like Lord Farquaad in the film. Somehow Gal Gadot,
so
who's
rude,
easily one of the top 10 most attractive women on the planet, is some evil, ugly stepmother, which she is not. I don't know how she burst out laughing.
Yeah, none of it
who's
worked.
the first of
The moment Jennifer's words hit the algorithm, it was like throwing gasoline on a fire that had been smoldering ever since the first teaser of Snow White dropped. Fans who had been quietly seething suddenly had a battle cry. And not just any battle cry, one delivered by an A-lister, an Oscar winner, and a woman who helped carry a billion-dollar franchise without ever needing to lecture the audience to earn respect. Jennifer Lawrence didn't just give people permission to criticize the current Disney formula, she validated everything they'd been feeling. The frustration, the nostalgia, The ache for something that didn't feel so forced. Social media went from grumbling to roaring. Tweets with "J-Law just said what we've all been thinking" flooded timelines. TikTok exploded with clips of her quote laid over classic Disney scenes. Ariel on the rock, Belle in the ballroom, Cinderella fleeing the palace at midnight. All of it paired with one line: "Where's the magic?" Suddenly, what felt like an abstract complaint about corporate storytelling became personal, emotional, and very, very viral. And poor Rachel Zegler. Well, not poor exactly, but let's just say her name came up. A lot. Clips from her old interviews started resurfacing like ghosts from Disney's not-so-distant past. The creepy prince quote.
Let's bring in some. I want to bring in someone who's seen the film. This is the publisher of Film Threat, Chris Gore. Chris, you've seen the film. Is it any good?
Yes, I have. Well, I'll have to give it up to Rachel Zegler. She has quite a singing voice.
The part about not needing to be saved. The infamous "I watched the original once and never again." Oof. It all came back. And side-by-side comparisons between Rachel's more combative tone and Jennifer's quiet conviction? Let's just say the internet did not miss a beat. Even people who had defended Rachel in the past started going quiet. One co-star allegedly said, "It's hard to defend someone when J-Law just made everyone agree with her in 10 seconds. That's not a quote. That's a roast in a three-piece suit." The difference in tone was glaring. Jennifer didn't sound like she hated progress. She sounded like she missed wonder. She wasn't telling people they were wrong to love the old stories. She was asking why the new ones didn't love us back. And when she followed up with, "I don't need princesses to be flawless, but I do need to believe they still want to be in the fairy tale," the internet lost it. That line hit harder than any think piece or fan essay. Because that, right there, is what people had been trying to say all along. It wasn't about rejecting new ideas. It was about the feeling that some of the new storytellers weren't just revising the past, they were scorning it. Inside Disney, things reportedly got tense. PR reps scrambled. Publicists got nervous. Some actors were told not to answer questions about Jennifer's comments at all. One exec allegedly called it a precision strike. And the wild part? Jennifer never once raised her voice.
Stock in 2015 was about $100. In 2025, it's still $100. For the last 10 years, Disney, you ain't done shit. I'm trying to save that money. I'm trying to invest that money. I'm trying to grow that money.
Gone.
Stock price has done nothing in 10 years.
She didn't need to. With one sentence, she accomplished what months of angry online discourse hadn't been able to do. She made people listen. What made Jennifer's words so devastating wasn't that she screamed them. It's that she didn't have to. She didn't storm into the room with a political agenda or a soapbox. She sat down, cracked a smile, and quietly pointed out the obvious. And somehow, that made the impact 100 times worse for Disney. Because this wasn't an attack from an angry internet mob or a disgruntled YouTuber. This was Jennifer Lawrence, an actress who helped redefine female leads for a generation, gently suggesting that the crown might be slipping. And that, more than anything, sent the studio into a tailspin. The tremors weren't just internal. Out in the industry, Jennifer's words started to echo in the most unexpected places. A handful of screenwriters reportedly began referencing her quote in private meetings. Some even called it the line that gave us permission to be honest again. One said, off the record, "You could feel the shift." Suddenly, it wasn't just okay to question the direction we were going. It was expected. Directors started quietly backing out of legacy remakes. A prominent filmmaker, set to reimagine Hercules, allegedly pulled the plug, telling colleagues, "We're not making movies anymore. We're doing brand maintenance." Actors, too, started reassessing their roles. One rising Disney star supposedly asked their team to renegotiate their press obligations, especially anything that involved praising a remake they hadn't even seen yet.
Disney, I know 6 dwarf actors with myself that would love these roles. I'll play Sleepy or Grumpy or whoever.
The reason? They don't want to end up like Rachel. An insider said, and just like that, Zegler's name transformed from headline to cautionary tale. And let's talk about that for a second. Because it's not entirely fair. Rachel Zegler didn't write the script. She didn't direct the remake, but she became the loudest voice associated with it. The one who criticized the original, the one who seemed, at times, like she was embarrassed to be there. And whether or not that was her intention, that's how it landed, especially when placed next to Jennifer's grace, her warmth, her quiet affection for stories that made her dream. When Jennifer said, "Where's the magic?" it wasn't just a critique, it was a reset, a cultural reset. A reminder that storytelling isn't just about representation or box office projections, it's about heart, about joy, about leaving the theater with stars in your eyes instead of bullet points in your brain. And suddenly, the audience started asking that same question, not just about Snow White, but about all the remakes. The Little Mermaid, Mulan, Peter Pan, and Wendy, the glossy nostalgia machine that had started to feel more like homework than wonder. Jennifer Lawrence didn't just speak for herself, she cracked open a pressure valve that had been rattling inside Disney fans for years. And once it burst, there was no holding it back. TikToks popped up overnight, pairing her quote with iconic Disney moments, Belle twirling in her golden gown, Ariel surfacing under a crescent moon, Cinderella fleeing down the palace steps.
For a whole community of people, I can argue I was on TV for 10 years. I was in film, not at the scale he was, but why because he throws the red flag is everything stopped?
Clips of vintage magic layered with Jennifer's soft-spoken truth bomb asking a question that now echoed everywhere. Where's the magic? People weren't calling for regression. No one wanted to erase progress or stop evolving the stories we tell. What they wanted, what they needed, was to be invited back in, to feel like the storytellers still cared. Like Disney remembered that fairy tales didn't need fixing. They needed feeling. And in Jennifer's one-line mic drop, that message landed like a fairy tale arrow straight through the marketing armor. Because this wasn't a call to boycott. It was a call to believe again. Behind the scenes, executives were scrambling. One insider claimed a previously greenlit remake of a beloved 90s property was quietly paused for thematic reevaluation. That's corporate speak for, maybe we went too far. Maybe the audience isn't the problem. Maybe we are. Development slates reportedly got reshuffled, and more than one project was sent back for rewrites with a new note attached. Make it feel like the original, not look like it, not reference it, feel like it. A directive that hadn't appeared on a Disney memo in years. But here's the kicker. The reaction to Jennifer wasn't driven by nostalgia alone. It was driven by trust, because she wasn't some internet personality chasing clicks. She wasn't part of a political wave trying to tear things down. She was Jennifer Lawrence.
But imagine you spend $250 million and you get some young girl and you don't kind of talk to her about like, hey, don't get political. You're young. And I know you have opinions about things, but this should be just about the movie.
Well,
let's just
to defend Big Head Girl, let me tell you something. The message of the movie is to be that bitch.
The girl on fire, the woman who helped carry a generation through some of the most iconic stories of the last decade. She'd earned her place. She wasn't bitter, she wasn't dramatic, she was just honest. And that honesty, it struck deeper than any angry YouTube commentary or think piece ever could. Meanwhile, Rachel Zegler, whether she liked it or not, became the unintended symbol of the disconnect. It wasn't just that she said the wrong things in interviews, it was how she said them. Detached, defensive, sometimes even dismissive. And in a world where fans are practically trained to analyze tone, cadence, and micro-expressions, those moments mattered. Viewers replayed clips of her rolling her eyes at questions about the 1937 original, or brushing off the Prince storyline like it was a bad joke. And while those comments may have been made offhand, the damage wasn't. Because when you're cast as the face of an iconic tale, the story isn't just on screen, it's in every word you say. And now, every word was being replayed next to Jennifer's. The contrast couldn't have been sharper. One actress asked where the magic went. The other sounded like she never believed in it to begin with. Whether that's fair or not didn't seem to matter anymore, because in the court of public opinion, perception is the story. And Rachel's perception problem was now a full-blown branding crisis.
They've been in a full meltdown about this girl for a couple of years now, and how they had her tweet out like a little, yay, Snow White, can't wait, so excited, I love to play her. And she did it and got like millions of views, and they were like, good job, Rachel. And then she, like minutes later, followed it up with, and never forget, free Palestine.
To make matters worse, the quiet ones, actors who once championed the new generation of storytelling, started backing away. One rising star attached to an upcoming Disney remake reportedly asked to tone down their press tour. Another requested to skip questions about legacy characters entirely. Why? Because they didn't want the Zegler treatment. That's what they're calling it now. The Zegler treatment. A cautionary tale inside Hollywood's most carefully curated kingdom. But what really stings isn't just that Rachel became a warning. It's that Jennifer, by doing almost nothing, became the antidote. She didn't rehash the past. She didn't trash the present. She simply longed for the magic. And that longing resonated harder than any think piece defense ever could. Because deep down, fans weren't mad that Disney wanted to evolve. They were mad that somewhere along the way, evolution started to feel like erasure.
I just mean that it's no longer 1937, and we absolutely wrote a Snow White that is
not going to be saved by the prince.
She's not going to be saved by the prince. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be,
Oh.
and the leader that her late father told her that she could be if she was fearless, fair, brave, and true.
Oh my god, it's a really incredible story. You're making this girl boss story based on an important father figure. Her father tells her to be brave and strong. Don't you think that there's something redeeming about men in this story?
Jennifer reminded them that stories can grow and still honor what came before. That characters can be powerful without pretending that love, beauty, or wonder are outdated concepts. And in doing so, she didn't just critique a movie. She cracked open the soul of a studio. What followed wasn't just chatter, it was a full-on reckoning. Executives who had once smirked at online backlash suddenly weren't so smug, because now the voice of reason wasn't coming from a YouTube commentator or a Twitter thread. It was coming from Jennifer Lawrence, someone the industry respects, someone whose resume carries weight in every corner of the business. And her words weren't bitter, they weren't political, they weren't performative, they were honest. And honesty, it turns out, is more contagious than any PR campaign. Behind closed doors, multiple insiders confirmed what fans had already guessed. Disney was rattled, and not because one film was flopping, but because the backlash had finally found a face people trusted. One source even described a meeting that took place less than 48 hours after Jennifer's clip went viral. The agenda reassessed the entire strategy behind upcoming remakes. Apparently, it wasn't just Snow White that was under review. Notes from the meeting leaked online, and they read like a creative identity crisis.
She's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love.
Tone recalibration, thematic, course correction, increased narrative warmth. That last one sparked a round of jokes on social media. What even is narrative warmth? Nobody knew, but fans translated it pretty quickly. Please, for the love of Walt, let's put the heart back into our movies. And this wasn't just a studio scrambling to salvage a PR disaster, it was a brand finally confronting the slow erosion of trust. For years, Disney had banked on nostalgia as a safety net. They thought people would show up no matter what, as long as the branding was shiny and the trailers hit all the right beats. But that illusion shattered the moment Jennifer said out loud what everyone had been whispering: the magic feels gone. Suddenly, the ticket-buying public wasn't just disappointed, they felt betrayed. And that betrayal isn't about political agendas or casting choices, it's about emotion. It's about watching something you love slowly morph into something you don't recognize, and being told you're the problem if you notice. Jennifer flipped that script in less than a sentence. She reminded fans that it's okay to want your fairy tales back, that stories don't have to be stripped of joy to be relevant. And for the first time in a long time, audiences didn't feel like they were being talked down to. They felt seen. The ripple effect didn't stop at Disney. It spread like wildfire through Hollywood. Other studios watched closely, some nervously. Because if a single off-the-cuff remark from Jennifer Lawrence could cause an industry giant to flinch.
What's ridiculous to me about the whole situation is it's not being progressive. You're hurting the community by what you're doing.
What did that say about the rest of the remake parade marching through development slates? Quietly, other actors began reconsidering how they talk about legacy roles. Directors took a fresh look at scripts that had been collecting dust under studio mandates for modern relevance. And writers, they were the first to speak up. One screenwriter, under strict anonymity, confessed that he once wrote a moving, whimsical sequence for a remake, only to have it cut because a producer wanted more social commentary, less sentiment. Now, that same producer was asking him to put the heart back in. It was like a pressure valve had burst. People weren't just reacting to Jennifer Lawrence, they were reacting to a decade's worth of pent-up frustration. A decade of watching beloved properties dragged through algorithms, stripped of subtlety, and reassembled like brand-safe puzzles. And as Jennifer's quote continued echoing through interviews, op-eds, and late-night segments, the message became unavoidable. The audience doesn't want a lecture. They want a story. They want to feel again. And they want the people behind the camera to feel it too. Even on social media, the tone shifted. Yes, there were still arguments. There always are. But a strange kind of unity emerged. Fans from every generation, from every side of the cultural spectrum, nodding in agreement at one simple idea.
I'm going to stand there 18 hours in a dress of an iconic Disney princess. I deserve to be paid for every hour that it is streamed online.
If I'm going to stand in a dress all day long, we do that, women do that anyway. You know what? We walk around in dresses and we don't get paid for it, Rachel.
That it's okay to miss the magic. that it's okay to want movies that don't just check boxes, but make you believe in something. And that somewhere along the way, the Dream Factory forgot what it was supposed to be dreaming about. Jennifer didn't offer a solution. She didn't have to. What she did was give everyone permission to speak up without shame, to say, hey, I miss the wonder, I miss the goosebumps, I miss the sparkle that used to live in these stories. And the minute that door opened, the flood came rushing through. Fans shared memories, scenes, songs, and tearful recollections of what these movies used to mean to them. It wasn't backlash, it was heartbreak. And that's what made it land with such devastating impact, because this wasn't a boycott. It was a love letter, one that ended with a plea: bring back the magic before it's gone for good. Behind the scenes, damage control quietly turned into introspection. Executives who once dismissed criticism as internet noise were now asking deeper questions about tone, about sincerity, about whether they'd wandered too far from the beating heart of their brand. And while no official statements were issued, there were signs that the message had landed. 2 major projects rumored to be in development were suddenly put under review.
I don't know why, in order to make a film more progressive, the woman can't have a focus on love or finding true love. They almost act like it's something to make fun of. When even in the original cartoon, she sings one song about finding her true love, the prince is in the movie for like a minute. Snow White wanted to find true love. That's fine, most of us do. She didn't really set out to be a leader. Not all of us do. Sometimes you just want to be in the middle of a forest baking pies. And some of us want to be saved by a prince. I know I do.
Even he gets it. We just want to be out in the forest baking pies. We want to watch a movie sometimes that shows a nice, happy ending, and it's okay.
One insider leaked that internal meetings had shifted from expansion talks to identity crisis assessments. It wasn't panic. It was realization that maybe somewhere between chasing box office trends and algorithm-driven storytelling, they had stopped trusting the audience to care. And the audience noticed. Rachel Zegler, meanwhile, remained conspicuously silent. Some fans speculated she had been advised to lay low, to let the storm pass. Others wondered if she even understood the scale of the shift. Because what Jennifer Lawrence had said, without naming names, without bitterness, had cast a long shadow, not just over one actress, but over an entire era of studio philosophy. A reminder that when the story doesn't respect its roots, the audience will notice. And they will remember. And while some called it unfair, others pointed to a simple truth. You can't play the lead in a cultural landmark and treat the landmark like a joke. Jennifer didn't attack. She didn't accuse. She simply remembered what the rest of the world was trying so hard to forget. That fairy tales work not because they're perfect, but because they're timeless. Because they tell us who we are and who we could be.
Yeah, because there's nothing more effective than 19-year-olds educating the rest of the voting public while yelling, "Okay, boomer."
Strip away the wonder, and you're left with something. Shiny, but hollow. Something that looks like a story, but feels like a speech. And no amount of marketing can fill that gap. By the end of the week, even rival studios were reportedly taking notes. Calls were made. Writers were summoned. In one leaked document from a competitor, the heading read, "Restoring the Why." No fancy language, just a quiet acknowledgement that storytelling isn't just about being current. It's about being human. And no one wants to buy a memory if it's been repackaged into a cautionary tale. What they want is to be moved, to be swept away, to hear that old melody and feel like the kid who stayed up late to watch it again. And Jennifer, without knowing it, had brought that feeling back. Rachel Zegler, once hailed as a breakout talent, with limitless potential, suddenly found herself at the center of a cautionary tale. Not for her acting, not even for her performance in Snow White, but for how she talked about the role, how she spoke about the legacy, how she seemed to misunderstand or simply dismiss what the role meant to the people who grew up with it.
People have real problems and no one gives a shit if she got paid for 17 instead of 18 on her multi-million-dollar salary, which is not calculated by the hour.
And now, those clips of her dismissing the prince as creepy or calling the original story weird played like PR grenades on a loop. Compared to Jennifer's one sentence about missing the magic, they came off cold, detached, even smug. It wasn't a fair fight, but that's how viral moments work. And right now, the internet had chosen a side. The deeper impact, though, was cultural. The fans who had been mocked for pushing back, labeled as nostalgic purists or regressive traditionalists, suddenly had an unlikely ally in Jennifer Lawrence. And not in a hostile, pitchfork-waving way. In a way that said, no, this matters. It's not silly to want magic. It's not childish to miss sincerity. She said what so many couldn't find the words to express, that it's okay to want, to believe. That modern doesn't have to mean hollow, that empowering doesn't have to mean cynical. And when someone with her level of credibility says that, it hits different. Inside Disney, the shakeup wasn't just creative.
In this, and it's not just the actors, it's Disney fans. Disney fans are offended by Rachel Zegler's comments disrespecting the movie that made Disney. And this is why there is 1 million dislikes on this trailer, and it's a culmination.
It was spiritual. The studio had spent the last decade refining a machine that knew how to produce success. But somewhere along the way, the joy had gotten algorithmed out of it. The moments that once made grown adults weep in dark theaters had been replaced with flawless CGI and bulletproof press releases. And Jennifer, with a smile and a shrug, reminded them that the most powerful thing in entertainment isn't polish. It's heart. It's the whisper of once upon a time that still gives people chills. It's the quiet belief that there's still room in the world for a little bit of magic. So now, the real question looms like a shadow over the Magic Kingdom. Will they listen? Will Disney, the studio that once defined cinematic wonder, take a breath, step back from the spreadsheets, and remember what made it great in the first place? Or will it double down on focus-tested formulas and characters built in committee rooms instead of imaginations? The answer might not come this week or next.
And then they had to hire a special media consultant for her to follow her around all the time and make sure she didn't continue shitting on Snow White and the prince and young love and women who want to get married and Steven Spielberg, the executive producer of her previous movie, and white people who she claims wanted to know if she was really a Latina on her first movie. The list was really long.
Fans will be watching closely because Jennifer Lawrence didn't just drop a quote, she fired a flare. And now audiences across the globe are waiting to see who answers. There's no villain here. Not really, just a studio that lost its way, an actress who voiced what many had been thinking, and a fan base desperate to fall in love with these stories all over again. It doesn't have to be this complicated. No one's asking for perfection, just connection. Just the sense that the people behind the curtain care as much as the people in the seats. Because when that alignment happens, when the storytellers remember their dreamweavers first and marketers second, something incredible can occur. The magic comes back, and maybe, just maybe, this entire moment, this viral shockwave, will be the start of that return. A reminder to everyone who holds a pen or directs a scene or approves a budget that fairy tales aren't meant to be fixed. They're meant to be felt. They're not checklists, they're catalysts for hope, for wonder, for believing again. And if Jennifer Lawrence had to be the one to sound the alarm, then thank goodness someone finally did. But what do you think? Did Jennifer Lawrence really say what we've all been feeling? Is Disney still capable of delivering that old school magic? Or is it too tangled in modern storytelling to ever find its way back? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit that like button if you're glad someone finally spoke up, and make sure to subscribe for more bold, honest deep dives into Hollywood's most dramatic turning points. And when you're ready for the next untold story that's been hiding just beneath the headlines, the next video is waiting.